Hello, everyone. We are back with another edition of The Boom by CreateIRL. And as usual, I have my dear friend Romina, who was fighting with me just a little bit ago, but now we're fine because we are friends. Hi, Romina. How's it going? What do we have today?
Oof. Well, I am super excited about our guest today because not only are we talking to a creative filmmaker, but we're also talking with someone who is a colleague and friend of mine. So I am really excited to be bringing on James Rath. Now, James Rath is a legally blind filmmaker and creator. And he's worked on documentaries, films, commercials. He's even interviewed Tim Cook on his own YouTube channel, which I think is pretty cool. And James, his aim is for his audiences to see different. So without further ado, let's bring up James.
Welcome,
Hello.
James.
Hi, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to have you.
So right off the bat, I want to discuss the elephant in the room. And it's not going to be what you think it is. Where I want to ask you about see different. Because obviously, the Apple is, think different, see
Sure.
different. I know that you love Apple. You talk about Apple a lot on your YouTube channel and on Twitter. So what's the deal here? What is it about see different?
Yeah, so See Different is a initiative that I launched recently, and it really actually just stemmed from a phrase or a tagline I would use in my YouTube videos, sort of at the end. And ultimately, it was sort of what I realized the mission of the channel was a few years ago. Just to kind of put into perspective, my manager, my talent manager, he really hammered me one day to think about what is your goal with your content? Like, what is it? I'm explaining what the content is. I'm like, but he's like, what's the mission statement? Like, if you had to summarize it in like a couple words. And ultimately it's like, it's to see different. It's to get a different perspective. And I don't know if that really stemmed from Think Different. I mean, as much as I love that campaign, it's really cool. But I think it just came from like the idea that my eyes see different, quite literally, visually. The spectrum of blindness, everyone who has different degrees of blindness and are considered legally blind or visually impaired or totally blind, we all see different. And what I'm trying to do with my content, my channel, is bring awareness of accessibility and when we design with accessibility in mind, and how that can be very enriching for our audiences, but even more enriching for us as creatives, as designers, entrepreneurs, when we open up our content. And disability can happen to anyone, anything, at any point in time. And isn't it great to have your content, your product, your service, whatever it might be, accessible to you for your entire lifetime? Lifetime. Yeah, that's pretty much where it stems from, is just the idea that I hope my content helps to open up new perspectives to people, and whether it's from myself or a guest that I bring on.
James, you mentioned the spectrum. Could you expand a little bit more on that? What are the categories that we should think about when we're talking about blindness, and especially when it relates to tech and the internet?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people get an idea of what like a disability or particular category like blindness is in their head, and it's just their idea of it, right? For a lot of people, they just assume a blind person cannot see. In a way, that's sort of what it means, but it also there's various degrees of that, and it's important to sort of identify that, because for myself, I'm legally blind, and that may be referred to as registered blind in other countries like the United Kingdom. So different terminologies can sort of be used across the world. Partially sighted is another one, but I tend to identify as legally blind because quite medically, that's how my vision is classified. And This may not relate to everyone if this is a sort of an international audience, and you just kind of translate how vision and acuity is measured in different parts of the world. But for me, most people know of 20/20. That's the pretty common wording for people who have normal human vision. Now, for me, my left eye is 20/200 to 20/300, and then my right eye is about 20/400, and that can even kind of get worse throughout the day, and that's just because of my underdeveloped retinas can get strained and fatigued. So essentially what that means, for example, my right eye, which is 20/400, something that a person with normal vision, 20/20, can see 400 feet away, it would have to be about 20 feet away for my right eye to really start to make out any kind of detail. And that, it's sort of a rough estimate and sort of measurement and test, but yeah, that's typically how that works. There's more details, and you can always Google's a good friend to go over that. But yeah, legal blindness, it also just means when someone is identified as legally blind, that vision can't be corrected. There's no pair of glasses or contacts that I can wear that will suddenly correct my vision to being even 20/100, just better like that. It can sharpen the image a little or make it bigger, magnify it, but it's still blurry, and it doesn't make it any more identifiable.
I actually had no idea that different countries had different ways of registering all of that.
Yeah.
So I just learned something new.
I learned that from making content and connecting with different people from around the world. Someone in the UK is like, hey, I'm registered blind. My vision's 20/80 or 20/60. I'm like, oh, that doesn't translate over here quite, to what we have. And it's a completely different, measurement. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
And speaking of of international stuff, you do quite a bit of traveling, and you like to travel. How does that play in with your content? Like, are you inspired when you travel? Do you create content while you travel? How do you deal with all of that?
Yeah, I was not a big traveler growing up, and maybe part of that had to do with the family I kind of grew up in. We stuck to where we lived and didn't go too far. A few vacation spots in New Jersey or Florida, but that was pretty much it. The biggest vacation I had growing up was probably to California, and that was only out of my dad finally being convinced that, okay, maybe he's really interested in film and movies and movie making. Maybe we should take him out there to kind of see that world. And my dad had never been to California either, at least as far as I know. So my family has always stuck to their roots, and that kind of changes with me. I like the idea to see different perspectives, and I think the best way you can do that is to get out of your neighborhood, get out of your country if you can. And it's such a privilege to travel. It really is. And a lot of my travels have come from work, which is, again, a huge privilege to have. And I recognize that. And I want to do a lot more in that line of work where I can highlight exactly what I do here in the States, which is accessibility and those benefits, but maybe show how other countries have been implementing accessibility into their policy or into architecture or even into just their culture or perception of people with disabilities in sort of that public eye. And because it looks different in different parts of the world, whether you go to Europe or Asia or Australia. And so I sort of capture that a little bit in a couple of videos, but I want to do a lot more of that. And so traveling's always been something in my adulthood that I've really just treasured, getting that opportunity to do.
James, I saw a video you made on your channel that I thought was pretty cool, that you had an old Mac. I think it was that Mac with the Abajur Mac, the very Pixar
right
kind
some
of
call it the sunflower Mac.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you were demonstrating how even back then there was a lot of thought into how to into accessibility and how to be ready for everyone. How far has tech come when it comes to accessibility? Is this a good journey, or is that still a lot to be done?
There's always a lot more to be done, but it has come a very far way since. I mean, that computer, I think, really amazed me that in 2002, a blind person could go to an Apple store, buy a Mac, and set it up all by themselves. There's a few little weird quirks here and there during that even initial setup process, and I highlighted those in my video where certain things were maybe formatted a little odd and may have been a little bit of an afterthought, or maybe the accessibility engineer at the time like wasn't in full communication with maybe some of the people formatting how like a form to sign up for your at Mac address was, little things like that. But the fact that I could get through the entire setup process without looking at that screen and getting all the way to the desktop and navigating the desktop and going into the settings and turning off the accessibility and all that, and you know, trying out new accessibility settings, it was really ahead of its time. And there have always been accessibility software settings, stuff like that out there for like Mac OS 9 and 8 and Windows 95 and things like that. But a lot of it cost a lot of money, whether it was a subscription annually or if it was a just another piece of software you had to buy or order through like a government service or something like that. They were always around, but it was Apple that sort of shipped their computer with it and their own implementation of, it's called VoiceOver, and it's a screen reader. A screen reader essentially is an overlay cursor that narrates the on-screen elements of your user interface imagery. If you have alt text or image descriptions are essentially when an image has the metadata of like the actual elements of what's in that photo. And you can manually write that if you're a coder or even on social media, Twitter and Instagram or Facebook. But yeah, it's really come a long way. It was in 2009 when smartphones started to really become accessible. I actually have it on my desk, and this is maybe a little teaser, but I'm planning to switch to an iPhone 3GS for a week in 2021. It's going to be a really hard effort to make, but it's coming up on the 12-year anniversary.
White or black?
It is the black one.
The black one, okay.
Yeah, that's just the one I had access to. It was actually my girlfriend's, and so she provided it to me. It's like her first phone.
I think it was the first time. It was the first of the S versions, right?
Yes.
Like it was the first time iPhone started breaking their line into the S stage before upgrading to a full number.
Correct. Yeah. So it was sort of that. It was sort of meant to be an upgrade for first gen iPhone users. It had video recording. It had a faster, like double the speed of the iPhone 3G. But what I think most importantly, it was the very first phone for blind users, smartphone, and I should say. There have been other very niche phones out there in the past, but this had VoiceOver and Zoom built in. So if you do have some vision, but you benefit from everything being magnified and large, like I do, especially with my video editing process, this allowed me to take 3 fingers, double tap into the screen and drag and change the zoom level on any application, no matter where I was in the app or OS. So I'm excited to minimize my smartphone usage because I'm probably not going to be able to use as many apps on this thing. And I may have to rely on Safari for a lot of like things like Twitter or things like that, because many of the apps, this thing's still running iOS 6. And it's going to be a challenge because I don't even think the App Store always opens, or it may not even be completely active. So it's going to be a fun challenge, but I just want to take some time to see where it started.
I'm surprised that thing even still works.
It holds a charge, and I'm
always surprised when that happens. Yeah. You know, like when people show up with like their original like iBooks and just like they're just showing up here with like 30-year-old machines, and I'm like, how?
some of these were just meant to last for a while. And you can say the same today, I think, on the iPhone line, in terms of just swap out the battery and you could use an iPhone success today. It still runs the latest software. The Macs, on the other hand, and I'm hoping with Apple Silicon, they'll last much longer, but I feel like the last few MacBook line or iterations haven't
They just don't build
been like they used to. I'm not gonna knock on them too much because it seems like they've learned a lot from these last few, like the Touch Bar MacBook Pro. And
yeah, I mean, it's give and take, it's like whenever one thing gets fixed, another thing gets broken. It just seems to be that way with a lot of things.
I don't even want to talk about the butterfly keyboard.
Oh boy, yeah.
Sure many don't.
And they had to revert, they had to take a step back and realize what they were doing. But before we stray too far, because I know we can get down the Apple rabbit hole and just be there for the rest of the interview. Right. But I do want to bring this back to you because you did mention editing, and I know that you've dug your hands in a lot of different aspects of filmmaking, and I was curious, which has been the most challenging for you to take part in, and which ones do you prefer?
Yeah, I think it's a balancing act when you are producing your own content and you are wearing the many hats. It's fun. I love directing. I love to direct. I do like some handheld running gun shooting as well. I'm not a cinematographer. I don't really claim to be. And so that's something where if I have a budget, I will invest in getting a cinematographer, right? Like, or other projects that just hire me to be a director. And then along with that, editing I do enjoy the edit process to some extent, but it can be a lot on my eyes. It's very straining. It's hours of just staring at footage, and sometimes my brain goes to mush, and sometimes I have to tell myself, take a pause, go for a walk, or even just sleep on it, come back to the edit in the morning with some coffee, and realize that you want to delete this entire sequence and redo it. But the editing, I think
you're not alone in any of that.
Totally fair. But yeah, it can certainly strain my eyes and cause actual physical migraines. That's sort of one detail of my vision. I have to just be a little conservative with how I use my eyes and how much light they're intaking throughout the day. And it's sort of this like self-managed process throughout each day. If I know I'm going to be editing a video, I'm probably using my phone completely like auditory, where it's reading everything to me, and I'm not trying to look at many things at all or stare at the sun, which no one should do. But and then I can have my
well, now we know why you're blind.
Exactly. Yep. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't help. But yeah. So that's sort of part of my process. Is I use macOS Zoom with Final Cut and text to speech. It's called spoken content in macOS Big Sur, and it's all these sort of settings where you can have it read things aloud as you're like hovering over things. So I know like what clip is which, if it has this tag that I'm looking for, if my mouse is hovering over the right effect, it'll tell me. And I can always zoom in and make sure that the thumbnail looks right, even if it's all blurry in a way. But so yeah, and so that's it's fun. I do enjoy editing, but if I can budget for an editor, I sometimes will for certain projects.
So what I'm hearing is you like to direct.
I do like to direct.
That's your jam. What part of directing attracts you the most? Is it working with the people? Is it working with the crew, the actors, or is it like creating a vision?
Yeah, I think it's in a way creating a vision from no vision.
Wow, you really had to go there.
Oh, I did. But no, it's fun to, I mean, for me, I didn't see myself very much growing up. We'll hold the puns. But in a sense where there weren't many blind, visually impaired characters in TV and film. And if there were, it was pretty much the whole plot revolved around the blindness. And if that were to occur, usually it was played by a sighted talent person who... And the thing is, visually impaired and blind people can act. There are blind and visually impaired actors out there, many of whom are actually like getting more work today, which is great, from just sort of this advocacy to have authentic representation, and for us to tell our stories, and even consult on the writing side as well to help ensure that things are just accurately portrayed. Because what happened a lot, I mean, I can throw to one example. There's a movie called My Blind Brother. It's a comedic film. It's a comedy, but man, it is one of the poorest portrayals of a blind person, right? Like, and even to some extent Daredevil at times, and you can argue Daredevil can see, but he's like, it depends on the interpretation. He still can't. He just has extremely good visualization from his hearing and his smell and everything like that. And there's still social cues and tendencies that a blind person, even with the most enhanced hearing and stuff, would still do. I will say Daredevil on Netflix did have a blind consultant. His name is Joe Strecce, and he's incredible. He's actually a producer for Apple TV's See, that show with Jason Momoa and Alfred Woodard, which also hires visually impaired and blind actors on that show. And I actually had the opportunity to consult on the first season of that and shadow Francis Lawrence, who is an incredible director. You probably know him from Hunger Games and whatnot. So that's why I enjoy directing, is giving opportunities like that and helping to move the industry forward to authentically cast and serve back my community. Because at the end of the day, it also comes to blind and low vision people. Only about 25% have a full-time job. So we're underemployed, and it's unfortunate to hear that. And if people want to tell our stories, we should probably be involved. And a lot of the reason is that people are unemployed in the blind community, because it just comes down to public perception. People think blind people aren't capable of office administrative work, accounting, things like editing video, which, it depends, but there's software out there that enables us to do that. And we can use surf the web. We can use, I know some amazing blind people that work in radio and sound engineers and people who like edit in Logic Pro and Pro Tools. And it's incredible. They're amazing. And it just comes down to, like, if we can better tell our stories, people see that in the media, and public perception of what a blind person is capable of doing, it will change over time. So I want to be part of that movement.
Yeah, I think that's really important too, because there are different levels of blindness, right? And so within that, there are different skills that people have. And like you said it yourself, there's you have friends or colleagues who are amazing audio engineers, and maybe you're not a great audio engineer, it's and everybody kind of learns to work with what they have, right? And I think it's important for people to know that's possible, I definitely have learned a lot just by being friends with you, and kind of learning things. I think one of the biggest things was just how to share content, make content more accessible on social media. I think that's probably like the biggest thing that I've learned from you. Just like little tips here and there. So I think every little bit kind of helps. Like not just the projects that you do, but your actual relationships and connections that you have with people do make a difference, because you're already doing it on an everyday basis. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
When you start a new project, whether it's a commercial or a YouTube video, how do you break down the process, like to go from zero to published to released? How do you what is the James Rath signature move here?
Yeah, I mean, this will depend on a few factors. If it is a commercial, for instance, whether it's for social, if it's okay, so if it's a brand integration, right, and I have full like kind of creative control, and the budget's literally just what they pay me to make this and share amongst my socials, but then give them, you know, the rights to use, and in a way I am sort of speaking on their service or mission or product, and using my likeness in that way. That's going to look different from me just directing a commercial that I was hired either by a production company or by the agency directly, and we work with a production company at that point. And those, as fun as commercials can be, you know, there is a little less. It's a little bit more hands off in the sense because you got so many people in the room to kind of stick their nose in it. But and sometimes for good, like, right, it's good to have multiple eyes on a project and get these different perspectives to help mold this product. One example I can sort of talk about, and I won't go into like full details of it, but I think it's kind of cool, and I think the agency kind of recognizes it too. But I directed a commercial for Tommy Hilfiger, and we technically shot 2 versions of that commercial. One was one that the agency originally, like, it's the one that they had a vision, and they wanted me to sort of take my vision and merge it together, right? That's how most commercials pretty much work, is the agency just, they know what they want to make for their client. The client already kind of approved it. But then you bring me in or another creative team to really help bring it to life. So we made what they wanted. But at the same time, I was capturing other things with the hours that we had our talent. And ultimately, we went off the script, and to the point where we used no script for that commercial. And it was literally the words that I got authentically out of my cast, who are all people with disabilities. And we hired them, gave opportunities to, again, my community was very important to me. It was very important for us to have our set accessible. So whether that was providing lifts or and what I mean is like sort of like portable elevators, stuff like that for the wheelchair users, stuff like that. Anyway, we made 2 commercials, and Tommy viewed both, and they went with the one that I ultimately kind of put together that was sort of a backup, and it won. So it does, you know, you're hired to, again, create the product that you're assigned to do with little touch-ups here and there, but then we had a lot of wiggle room with time and budget, and I ultimately made a version that won 3 awards at Cannes Lions Advertising Festival, which I don't think many directors can say that for their first commercial, which is pretty cool. And so that's the process with a commercial. When it comes to like my own videos and stuff, it just, with YouTube, it all kind of depends. I tackle a few different areas: technology, a little bit of the personal journey with the visual impairment, and things I just find accessible and want to share, like experiences, whether it's surfing or travel or whatever it might be. And sometimes it just stems from experience that I capture, and then I sort of create this narrative in the post process. Or I have an idea and I just try and go and capture as much as I can of that idea, and it just works out. I don't know. It's hard because like every project's different, right? Like the process changes and you adapt. I think that's part of the creative process in general. You adapt to what you know, not everything works out the way you'd assume.
Right. Not everything is all cookie cutter.
Unfortunately, but sometimes for the best, you get a really nice product in the end.
Yeah,
You weren't
and
expecting.
you do have a diverse. You do have a lot of different types of videos on your channel. Like I wouldn't say that you're, you know, a tech channel or a
Yeah.
travel channel, because it's the James Rath channel, really.
Yeah.
It's like it's just a lot of you, right? And the different aspects of what it is to be you and create. So there is a lot of diversity in your own channel. So I'm sure that every single video doesn't follow a specific
Right.
formula or
No, it's
process.
true. Yeah.
Is there
Yeah.
a topic that you prefer, James, to explore?
Uh, See, I love travel and tech, like pretty much hand in hand. The one has been a little harder to do this last year. So it's been a lot of tech lately on the channel, which again is cool. I'm trying to balance that too with like, I just made a video talking about, I just went to an eye doctor, got an update on my diagnosis, found out there's this third ocular condition that's, impacting my eyes. And so I detailed that, and I talked about how the vision in my right eye has been decreasing. And the reason why I'm even going to the eye doctors when typically I don't necessarily need to. It's not like nothing has really changed very much with my eyes. I guess now it's starting to as an adult, but I'm in the process of getting a guide dog. So that's a whole other like journey that's soon going to be documented on the channel. And in a way, it's been talked about through like a Q&A video that's popped up last year. And it's a long process, but once things are like the gears are set into motion, I think it's going to be one sort of narrative that people, I think, will really be interested in, because it's such a different process to get a guide dog from any other service dog. And guide dogs are highly respected amongst like service animals because they go through like 2 years of training and at a school, and these schools are all like sponsored and donation based, but for the most part the dogs are completely free for blind and low vision people who are approved. Some schools may work a little different, but from all the schools I've talked to, they fly you out, they feed you, they dorm you during the training process for 2 weeks, and they cover veterinarian costs and a lot of that. Sometimes even in California, I think you can get certain government subsidies to have a guide dog food paid off each month, or it's like a tax write-off or something like that. But that's, yeah. So it's a journey, and I'm excited to share that once I'm not fully approved yet. And it's just more so the school does very much think I will benefit from it, and we're just getting all the actual medical documentation down.
You realize that once you introduce a dog into your YouTube channel, your audience, I mean, goodbye, James.
I know.
Like,
right?
Yeah, it's I don't know if you ever saw this, but there was a show on Netflix called Dogs, Just Dogs. And the very first episode is about a young girl who I don't remember what she had. I think it might have been epilepsy. Like, I think she got seizures, maybe. I'm not really sure. But the whole episode was following her process. It's a docuseries, and it followed her process of getting a service dog.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very interesting process, but it's also very heartwarming. I mean, I love dogs, so to me, anything that has a dog in it is going to be special.
Right.
So I'm totally looking forward to seeing
so we got Romina hooked on the
I'm
content.
notifications turned on.
There you go.
James, speaking of something else that's also very fun, games. You are a gamer. I've learned that on the iJustine. What's the podcast name? Same Brain.
Same Brain.
Same Brain. Yeah, very cool interview. Super fun.
Thank you.
And you were talking about the, your experience with games. Is that an area that is advancing enough, maybe with the exclusive games or some sort of a tech that's it's helping at all?
Yes, gaming is getting quite advanced, as we know with PlayStation 5 and Xbox, and even what the Switch is able to turn into a portable game. And with that, we have been seeing some mindsets change from developers in wanting to make their games more accessible. I've had the absolute pleasure of working on The Last of Us Part 2 for about 2 years, and that was to help make that game more vision friendly, visually accessible. It's a really fun game. whether you like the story or not, it's a fun game to play. The gameplay is great, and it's a 3D adventure action game in like this sort of cinematic universe. At the same time, people who are totally blind are playing the game on a hard difficulty and live streaming it and winning and beating it and unlocking achievements. And it's partially thanks to many people who contribute to that. It's not just me. I really helped with some of the like total blind features, like audio settings, but also with a lot of the contrast settings, the things that people with low vision would really benefit from, like a built-in magnifier, so you can zoom in at any point into the game. The menus right from the beginning can read everything to you. It will tell you different crafting recipes right off the bat when you're going through those menus. And some of the coolest things are like radars, like auditory radars. So when you are crouching, you can send out a signal and listen with 3D audio to like where enemies are or where interactable items are. And each particular character or type of like category of character or item will have a different ring or a different tone to it. And you can go through like the audio library to learn all these different ones, or just learn on the fly, like as you're playing the game. So that game ended up winning not only the Game of the Year award, but accessibility award for the Game Awards last year, which was just, I think, amazing to see that a game that can win Game of the Year can also be like the gold standard for an accessible title. It really just kind of, I think it gives most AAA developers no excuse to invest in accessibility into their titles. And we're seeing it now more. There are a lot more job positions opening up for accessibility project managers, for accessibility consultants that are full-time or part-time at these developer studios. And continuously they are hiring consultants like myself who test video games to ensure that they have a great user experience for people who are blind and low vision or deaf or hard of hearing or have cognitive disabilities or physical motor skill limitations. So I think it's just it's changing, it's evolving. Sony and Microsoft are making leaps in that industry and also bringing awareness to the importance of it and being great influencers to their developer partners. Nintendo has done a couple things. They're also wildly quiet when it comes to accessibility, unfortunately. They do make a lot of accessible games, and you can say it's accidental accessibility, where it's more so it's these sort of little things they add. They try to make their games just approachable, I guess, or welcoming for many audiences. And some things end up checking off different boxes for like, okay, yeah, a person with a cognitive disability will benefit with this. Person who has a visual impairment did benefit from this game design, but they don't actually go through a checklist or have like a consistent accessibility guideline or standard in their company, unfortunately. So it causes inconsistencies of quality of accessibility amongst all of the hundreds of games Nintendo releases throughout a generation.
Did you play the first Last of Us?
I did a bit. In
comparison with the second.
Yeah.
What?
It's a lot more accessible from the second one. Are you asking how do I think about the story?
Both. All of the above.
I love my friends at Naughty Dog. I do think. I think it opens the door for a third one, right? Like that's cool.
Yeah. I thoroughly enjoyed the first one.
I did too. It was a little bit more of a straightforward storyline, and they tried something new for a sequel, right? Having like two protagonists and
right.
Trying to like in the end when you get to the I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah, don't. Yeah. Because I haven't played the second one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I know.
Okay, I thought you were like
I'm a little
I thought you were trying to get me to like it was
no.
like a gotcha moment kind of thing. Like
no. I was curious.
It's not.
I was just curious to know.
No, it is a very enjoyable game, and then story wise, it's for some people. Not everyone's gonna like enjoy some of the directions they took, but it's a mature story. It's a gritty, crude, story, and it's break some hearts of fans here and there.
So how did you get involved with them and to be able to consult on this? And do you feel like that's something that you'll be doing more of in the future?
So gaming's always been close to me. It's actually Pokemon's my earliest memory, as I've mentioned in some videos, and having a Game Boy with like the light and the magnifier on the screen back in the day it's what I remember when I was like 3 with Pokemon Yellow and Pokemon Blue. So I've always loved gaming, but not every game has worked out for me. I've unfortunately saved up money and bought some games during like the GameCube or Wii or 360 eras of gaming, and it just not every game worked. It didn't. I couldn't get very far, or some things were just out of my visual reach, and I kind of stepped back from gaming, especially in adulthood, at first, because one, I think it was just a matter of it wasn't very accessible for me. I only played 3 games when I first moved to LA, and I just bought like a Wii U to play Smash Brothers and Mario Kart on like my days off with friends who I game with occasionally. And then I bought Splatoon. I really enjoyed it, and Splatoon I think really is what pulled me back into it. And it's like this, it's another Nintendo game, and it is accessible to some extent. It's visually accessible in the sense where it's just 2 teams basically fighting over territory. You're half human, half squid, and you can swim in ink. You're shooting ink with all these different weapons, and you want to cover the map with your color ink more than the other color in 3 minutes. So it's pretty fast paced, like game in that sense. And that is what pulled me back into gaming a bit. I'll be honest. So I do have Nintendo to thank for that. So I got, I lived in downtown LA. E3 is right down the street from me. I had to go check it out. So I got a industry or press pass for E3, and I was just checking it out. I wasn't really there to report on anything necessarily. I was just sort of like figuring out what is happening. What is the current landscape of accessibility for gaming? And there's a couple things here and there beyond, color blindness modes that have existed since like the PS2. But Justine was there. Justine is Eric, and she happened to see me at the Nintendo booth and said hi. And I've seen her content. I've loved her content growing up. She's been a very motivational creator for me, and someone to sort of look to, especially when it comes to like how she presents herself, her brand friendliness, and just being an approachable figure. And she had, seen a video or 2 of mine and recognized and took the time to like chat and then put me in her vlog and stuff, which was cool. And that connection sort of blossomed into an opportunity to meet Jeff Keighley, who is a big figure in the gaming space. He used to be on G4. He went to GameTrailers.com. He's been at E3 for years, and he had this whole programming called E3 Coliseum for like panels and discussions. And so I got asked to be on accessibility in gaming panel the following year, which was an absolute honor. And I met some of my favorite people, and one of those happened to be Sam Thompson of Naughty Dog. He's a producer, and so that's how that connection actually happened. And so it's something I want to continue to do for sure. I want to continue to see the gaming industry get more accessible, and I now live stream in this little area. I have a PS5, I have a Xbox Series, and Switch, and I like to game as well, and hopefully share the just the fun aspects of accessible games.
How big of a deal is the feedback on the new controllers? All the tech in these new controllers that are coming out.
So I know Xbox now has stated that they want to sort of reimagine their Xbox Series controller to better compete with the DualSense innovations of the PS5 controller, which is fair. The PS5 controller feels absolutely amazing when you're playing it. It's very distinct with its feedback in different areas of the controller, and it has different pressure that developers can tinker with depending on what they want you to feel. If you're feeling the feedback from a gun or a laser or something, or explosion, you can feel that. Or if your character's falling and the weight of the gravity as they hit the ground, it's very well done. And I played Astro's Playroom, which is a free game that comes with PS5, and that game takes full advantage. It really is like more of a tech demo, but it's fun, and I hope that character can like star in its own like full-fledged title, because it's a really cute game. Do apologize from the city if you hear any sirens. It was bound to happen as we're here for an hour. Anyway, yeah, it's really, I think, going to change the way that many people play. And there are some people who play games who don't want any rumble, which is fair, right? It can be a little too much for people who have maybe physical disabilities, where it's very straining on hands and arms. But for people who are blind and low vision, who have much more appreciation for the rumble features, it's game changing, and I hope we see more do it. Nintendo has a pretty decent foundation with the HD rumble on the Switch, and Returnal, I think, is a game that takes really good advantage of this. It's sort of that one outside the tech demo of Astro's Playroom, where Returnal is a new PlayStation published game. It's a third person shooter, and they really tried to make DualSense like one of its selling features, with just how you feel the feedback from enemies or your weapons, or the way your character sort of navigates around this like 3D space. So I actually do plan to talk about Returnal on my channel, and just sort of DualSense in general, and do a full-on PS5 review. Now that it's been like, how many months now? I don't know. It's November. It's been like nearly 7 months now. And so I feel like, all right, maybe I'm due to do a review at this point. I don't consider myself a journalist or anything like that, but it's the content I feel like people may want to see on the tech side, and my overall feedback and criticisms as well of these new consoles and products. So I've been considering doing more review-based videos instead of just talking about positives. We got to get negative sometimes, so things can improve.
I'm not a fan of the shaken controllers, man. Like I can't.
That's fair.
It's something that I always turn off. I'm just like it's too much for me, especially if I'm playing something that's scary, because I'm already getting scared, right? It's like there's sound, and like I'm looking at this thing like pop out at me, like it's a lot of like sensory overload for me. So then on top of that, to have like this thing just like suddenly go brrr and like shake in my hand, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, all right, like settle down, it's too much. It's too much for me. I can't handle it.
They have gaming chairs too that also apparently incorporate rumble and everything. I've never tried it.
There's only so much.
But I'll get you one.
Wow, thank you. But on that note, all right, I want to ask you, headsets like the Oculus and doing all that stuff. Is that something that can be accessible? Have you played with one of those? Like I haven't. The last time that I used one of those was a few years ago, where it was super like it was very bad. Yeah, it was like really just not that great, and made me very nauseous. So what is your experience with that, and what are your opinions on that?
So VR and AR, we'll tackle VR first, because they are different things, and I think it's important to know the differences. So virtual reality can be a little bit more accessible for me than maybe a person who's totally blind, because you're getting screens really close to your face, right? And so I'm nearsighted, so the closer that things are to me, the little bit more detail my eyes can make out. Now, I should be cautious about how much time I'm spending in a game that is VR or an application. And with that, text also just needs to be large, and maybe there is like text to speech and other accessibility features built into an application. That'd be great. That'd be amazing. But the other side of it is 3D audio, where you can, and if you haven't experienced 3D audio, I highly recommend it. It's a very different experience than just stereo audio. It's where you can quite literally pinpoint how far away something is in this sort of audio space. and what side of your head it's on. And there's a great application that's actually free. It's from Microsoft, and it's on the iPhone. Funny, I know, Microsoft on Apple. But it's an accessibility application called Soundscape. And it's a really cool accessible innovation. It's essentially just wear your AirPods or wired earbuds or whatever it might be into your iPhone and walk around a city. And what it will do is it will notify you of how far you are to certain shops or places that are on your left or right. But it does it through having audio tones and bells and beacons. And it's essentially getting an audio map in real time of the street that you're on. And you can also set a beacon down if you're trying to head to a certain destination. So say I'm walking down to Starbucks and I'm on 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica. And it will notify me that, hey, you're passing H&M, you're passing the Apple store on your right. But it's not saying that. It's literally just, it will say like Apple store, 3 meters, but you hear that voice coming directly on your right side of your head. So that's pretty cool. 3D audio, and that being in VR can make it a lot more accessible.
James, is 3D audio different than the spatial audio that Apple is putting out recently?
I think it's pretty much the same thing, if I'm not mistaken.
Same thing, okay.
Yeah,
Audio engineers may want to correct me on that, because I'm not one. But spatial audio, I think maybe just more of a marketing term to 3D audio. They're both marketing terms, really.
Just a label for the same thing.
Correct, yeah.
Like
Correct.
Kleenex or tissue paper.
Yeah. And then there's augmented reality, right? And that's AR. We've been hearing that a lot. The newest iPhone has a LiDAR sensor, which is essentially a little laser that can be shot from the little camera sensor, and within like milliseconds know how far away it is from an object or a person. And if you have an iPhone 12 Pro, you can already use one of Apple's first like AR LiDAR tools or applications in the Magnifier app. And the Magnifier app is an accessibility feature. It's meant to allow you to just sort of zoom in on like menus or signs or, mail or whatever it might be if you're, visually impaired or just having a hard time reading something that could be really small text or print. And you can add different filters that are pretty common in the visually impaired world, which are, again, pretty cool that like something like this in your pocket can replace a $5,000 monitor and tabletop like camera that I remember having as a kid. And that aside, Magnifier app has a thing called people detection. And this is a new thing where it uses the LiDAR sensor, where it will tell you how far away a person is. It can detect people, moving objects that are, if iPhone realizes what is a person, it'll tell you literally if they're 6 feet away, 10 feet away, how many people are there. And it can also do like real-time haptics to sort of intensity of like how far away you are, or sounds as well if you have your phone not muted. And you can test that now if you have an iPhone with the Magnify app. It's free. It's in the accessibility settings. And yeah, I'd say give it a try. It's not the most practical though, being on an iPhone, right? Because blind people oftentimes either have a dog or a cane maybe in one hand and then your phone in your other hand. And if you're walking through the grocery store, you want to probably be a little more hands-free with an application like that. But I think they're really just testing the waters for a future hands-free AR product down the line. I hope so, at least. Like I don't know any more than you, but I'm hoping that's what this is really for. That's my speculation, and I'm excited for what may come in the AR space from Apple. They've been hyping it up every year at WWDC, which is about to happen on June 7th, 10 a.m. Pacific time. And who knows what new innovations they'll have. But yeah, that's AR can be really great for accessibility applications for sure. And also in the filmmaking world too. And that's a whole other conversation with how AR can, visual effects and make it just really democratize visual effects. There's already a lot of applications out there where you can bring 3D models from your computer that you make or just people put up onto a marketplace and put it in your iPhone movies. So it's gonna be amazing.
Incredible. Well, James, I could probably talk to you for 3.5 more hours. I have so many more questions. Just talking to somebody else who is creative, it's always so fascinating to hear what other creatives processes are for creating their projects. And I'm eternally grateful for you coming on to the Boom and talking to us about this. I'm sure that our members are going to really gain a lot of knowledge just from the 50 so minutes of us talking. So thank you for joining us, James. And before we kick you out, let us know where to find you, your links. This is the place. This is #free promo. This is a place where you can just ruthlessly share what you are doing and what's to come.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure this last hour. At James Rath, pretty much everywhere. It's RATH, drop the W, I'm not that angry. And seedifferent.co is where you can learn about my new podcast, the See Different Show, and the store that I have where we donate proceeds of every purchase to support nonprofits and charities that are just trying to align with the vision of making things more accessible rather than researching for medical treatment and cures that may never actually happen. So we're just trying to create a more sustainable and accessible society. And yeah, other than that, youtube.com/James Rath and jamesrath.la is my website and portfolio. So.
Well, thank you so much, James. You're such a great guy doing some amazing work. And please, by all means, get the dog.
I'm working on it. Hopefully soon. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, Romina, that's it for today. See you on the next. See you in the next one.
Yeah, I hope so. Unless I kick you out.
Well, you can kick me out. I dare you.
Well, don't dare me too hard.